Hey, Kaedy, this is Marc Martel.
Hi, Mark. I'm here with Melissa, your friend from the paper. I'm from the radio, and we're so excited about talking to you.
Hi, Mark.
What a great tag team you got going on there.
I know.
Hey, how you doing?
Two for the price of one. Well, thank you so much for giving us a call today and talking about the Queen movie and Black Jacket Symphony and all the other stuff that you got going on. It seems like a busy time for you.
It is. I feel like we've got all cylinders firing at once. It's really cool.
I bet you do. Where are you right now?
I'm at home in Nashville.
Tell us a little bit about yourself as far as your background. Now, you started as a singer in a Christian rock band, right?
Yeah, I grew up in the home of a pastor. My dad's a pastor. My mom was the choir director and piano player, and that's how I got my start in music. And I went to Christian Bible College, and that's where I started my rock band. It was called Down Here, and we did that for about 13 years or so.
Oh, wow.
And was that in Canada?
Yeah, it was. But right after college, we actually got signed to a record label here in Nashville, which is why we all moved down in 2001.
Okay, so you've been in Nashville for a while.
Yeah, it's actually the longest I've ever lived in one town, so it's really home.
And now it's the exact right place to be.
Yeah, absolutely.
Who discovered your vocal similarity to Freddie Mercury? I mean, did you always sort of know that, or was that something that people were always pointing out to you?
If I were to pick the person that figured that out for me, it probably was my bass player, one of my best friends, Glenn. He, in the early 2000s, I remember him saying, hey, you really need to check out these Queen guys. This Freddie Mercury guy just naturally sounds like you. And I had gotten that a few times from people coming to our shows. They're saying, hey, you really remind me of Freddie Mercury. And I'm like, well, I think I know who that is. I was vaguely aware of a band called Queen who I first heard in the movie Wayne's World.
Oh, right. Okay.
And so
You are such a youngin'.
I'm not that young. I mean, I was a teenager when that came out. I did not grow up listening to Queen at all.
Right. That's kind of where I'm kind of tickled, because that's very interesting to me that would be your first introduction.
My first introduction was probably at an Expos game in Montreal or something like that.
Right. And you might not have even known that's who it was.
Exactly.
At some point, you became part of the Queen Extravaganza that Roger Taylor was doing. And did how did that come about?
Well, the way the Queen Extravaganza, which is the official tribute band of Queen, came about was it's the brainchild of Roger Taylor, the drummer of Queen. Mm-hmm. He started a website called the Queen Extravaganza and said, we're opening auditions to anyone in North America to audition for this band. And the tagline was, quit your day job, join a rock band. And I kind of snickered at that because I was already doing that full time. But I thought, here's an opportunity that I've sort of dreamed about for the last few years. What if Queen ever heard me? And they thought that I had something special. But at the same time, I was like, I don't know if this is anything special. There's a lot of people in the world. There's bound to be a bunch of people who sound like Freddie Mercury. I don't know if it's just like a cool party trick or if it's potentially like, a career decider. I don't know. But I decided to audition for it after my wife kind of urged me to do it, since she said, you were born for this. And I was like, well, I don't know if I win this, if I were to win something like this. I've got this other band that's going on. Even though things aren't in a super awesome place right now, it could really disrupt things. Mm-hmm. But she said, you got to do it, and I did it. And sure enough, I won the position of lead singer, and that did a lot to dictate the course of my musical career over the last few years.
So when was that you did the Queen Extravaganza?
That was in 2011.
What song or songs did you audition with?
The first one was Somebody to Love, which is my favorite Queen song, and it went viral immediately, which was very strange. I don't know if you've ever had a viral video, but it's weird. It's very weird to have literally millions of eyes on you, and people not only looking at you but leaving their comments. And thankfully for me, it was about 99% positive.
A good experience, yeah.
And it was a good experience, yeah.
So you did that, and any other songs?
There were 3 stages of the audition. Round 2 was Crazy Little Thing Called Love. And then the last part of the audition was all the finalists, like there were 30 of us approximately left for the final positions of the band. And for that, they flew everyone out to L.A. to the studio of the Foo Fighters.
Oh, cool.
Because the Foo Fighters are good friends with Queen.
Right.
So Queen used their studio for the final audition. And in the final audition, they kind of sectioned us off into different bands of 7 or 8 members to see what we would do in a band situation. it was a very diverse group of people. There were some people who had been like karaoke people who had only sung in front of people at bars.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Other people were lifelong musicians. There's a pretty awesome motley crew of people at that final audition. I think we performed Crazy Little Thing Called Love and maybe One Vision, which is kind of a deeper track.
Yeah,
that's
I love
a great
it.
song. Yeah,
Yeah.
not
From
to
the
us.
Vision Quest movie soundtrack.
That's right.
See, I remember that from my earlier radio days. That's really cool. Did that add more pressure to you, or it sounds like that actually made it fun for you to compete like that?
It was fun. I've always enjoyed competition, especially at something I feel like I'm good at. I tend to stay away from competing in anything that I feel like I can't win.
So no,
I like
like
to
discus
stick the
throwing
tail
for
a
you
little
or
bit.
something.
That's funny. That's great.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you won't see me auditioning or competing at stand-up comedy or something.
Although you're doing pretty well with us.
Oh, I appreciate it.
Yes.
Having been involved in the Queen Extravaganza, did that sort of set the road to now being, part of the movie with your voice being, and if you can also explain or clarify for us exactly what I've seen the movie, so I know.
Oh, you have?
Yeah, I saw a screening of it last week, and I mean, I thought Rami Malek was just give the guy an Oscar. I mean, he's just extraordinary in his portrayal
Amazing.
of Freddie. But the vocals were amazing too. So is it a combination of you and Freddie's masters? Is that right?
That's correct. That's
Okay.
correct. Yep. And the whole point was so that people can't tell when it's not Freddie. So if you couldn't tell, then mission accomplished.
Wow,
Wow,
that's
because you
interesting.
really cannot tell at all. Yeah.
That's good to hear.
What was
I haven't seen the movie yet, so you're a step ahead.
Oh, you haven't seen it yet? What, have you heard though? I mean, have you heard the soundtrack, or have you heard what they've done with the voices?
I know what I've recorded,
Yeah.
but I don't know exactly what of it they
how they used it?
have used. Yeah.
That's really interesting. But how did that come about? I mean, did the fact that you were part of the Queen Extravaganza sort of bump you, to the head of the line to do
Oh,
this?
absolutely. Having a relationship with Queen was the whole point. I mean, the whole reason I got that. I mean, I've been working with them since 2012, and I have a relationship with them, which is kind of crazy to say. Still, 8 years later,
Sure.
they're fully aware. Like, it's funny when I see people tweeting at me saying, "Hey," they tweet at Dr. Brian May or Queen in general and say, "Hey, you need to hire this guy. I can't believe you've never heard of this guy." Well, yeah, they kind of were the reason why I'm doing Queen in the first place. So
And I've got to say, just as an aside, it was when Freddie was still alive, was the first time I ever interviewed Brian May, and he came into the studio and he played guitar on the air for me, which was really, really cool. But then we kind of got friendly because he was doing some solo stuff, and he'd come back to Atlanta, and he had to cover up the fact that Freddie, they knew what was happening with Freddie. It was when Innuendo came out. So,
Really?
yeah, and I listened back to that interview because sometimes I'll play pieces of it, and it just breaks my heart because I was kind of teasing and saying, you're not touring because Freddie won't do it, right? And Brian May, my aside, though, is that Brian May is one of the most fascinating, nice people, most down-to-earth people I've ever met. Have you spent time with him?
I spent a little bit of time with Brian. He's super kind, unassuming, as you would hope someone like that would be.
Yes.
And that persona really shines through when he's on stage. He's kind of like the reluctant rock star, like he's just this incredible guitar player, totally imaginative songwriter, but his stage presence is very unassuming. He's kind of like the quiet genius on stage.
Yes.
And he's exactly that in real life, as you probably know.
Yeah, well, I haven't spent tons of time with him that wasn't business-wise, which I guess you're saying probably too, that you haven't, but what a nice group of people to be working with.
Absolutely. So kind, yet having, made an indelible mark on the world of rock and roll.
Oh, yeah.
Well, tell us a little bit about what, you're going to be here in Atlanta in February with Black Jacket Symphony. I'm reading up on them. I know they do stuff from AC/DC to Zeppelin to Tom Petty. Now, you are only with them, though, for Queen?
Yeah, they were the first project that I ever did that branched out from that original band, the Queen Extravaganza. For the first 5 or 6 years, even though I was getting offers from other concert promoters or what have you to do Queen material outside of the Queen Extravaganza, I would turn that down, carte blanche. Just like, no, I reserve my Queen work with the Queen Extravaganza. And so in 2016, I hired a new manager, which was a very important move on my career. And the first thing he told me was, "You're going to stop turning down work."
He's like, you really need a manager if you're turning down all this work.
Soon after that, actually, it just kind of worked out that we get this call from this guy named Jason Rogoff. And he's like, "I've got this band in Birmingham, Alabama, and what we do is we perform classic rock albums start to finish, and that's our niche thing that we do. And we've been wanting to do a night at the opera for a long time, but we just never had the singer. Would you be interested in doing this tour with us?" And then I said, "Well, for the first time, I'm going to say yes." And I did, and that was my first foray into outside of Queen Extravaganza, which now has become quite normal for me now. I'm doing Queen sort of in many different formations at this point.
Your manager must be happy.
He's not mad about it.
Yeah. So you hooked up with Black Jacket in 16 or 17?
16 was the first time, yeah.
Okay.
Wow, I'm excited about seeing this.
I
It sounds
know.
amazing.
Yeah. So you're doing a night at the opera in full, top to bottom?
Top to bottom, as close to the record as humanly possible. So it's kind of a short record. It's like 35, 40 minutes long.
Yeah, I was going to
so
say.
The rest of the show is greatest hits.
Oh, okay. Okay. So then more Queen after that. From that album, I mean, what is the most challenging song on there for you? I mean, is it Bohemian Rhapsody, or is there something else that's even harder to nail?
Bohemian Rhapsody is honestly not that hard. There's a reason why it's so popular. It's because people can sing along.
Yeah.
That's true. That's a good point. Yeah.
But probably the most challenging song on that record is the Prophet song, because it's very prog, it's very Brian May, and it's got that middle section where it's me all by myself with my echo, if you're familiar with the song.
Yep.
It's definitely a deep cut, but I think it was kind of Brian's attempt at writing a Bohemian Rhapsody. It's really all over the place. It's really takes a while to get your head around that song. It took me a while anyway, but it's super fun to play and really challenging to sing.
Of other Queen songs, not on that album, I mean, you said Somebody to Love is still your favorite in their catalog?
Probably. It varies from every time I get this question, like, well, today I love Under Pressure, or I'm just going to say the obvious Bohemian Rhapsody. They've got so many great songs that it's hard to pick one.
What's the most fun one for you to sing?
I'd probably go with Under Pressure, just because that's the one chance I get normally during a show to sing with someone else.
Yeah.
And I just love that synergy and that brotherly thing that honestly, I think that's part because I miss my old band where I was a co-lead singer in my old band and shared the lead with another guy. And
that's interesting.
The one song every night that I can count on that I'll be able to sort of have that again.
Who sings with you when you do that?
We usually get a guest singer.
Oh, okay.
His name is Sean. And he's a friend of the Black Jacket Symphony, also actually a radio DJ in Birmingham, I believe.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. Have you seen Black Jacket Symphony do their other stuff, or have you only done, I mean, I know you've only done Queen with them, but have you gone to see any of their other shows that they do?
I actually have not. I've seen a few clips online.
Because it sounds like they do some really cool things.
Oh, they really go for it. I mean,
AC/DC.
when a song calls for a gong, they will bring out a gong. So.
Well, they could do some Queen songs then. I guess that would make sense.
I was going to say, with
Absolutely.
AC/DC, do they bring out the cannons?
Yes, they can. Yeah, like do the whole. That's a whole other extravaganza. With the movie coming out, Mark, you're kind of under the radar. I mean, you know what I mean? Like people go online and they might find the clips of you. But how do you feel about being part of the movie and this possibly, bringing you to a whole other level once people start finding out more about who you are and your vocal capabilities?
It's kind of a weird thing because the whole point is to remain unknown as far as my involvement in the movie goes. Because if people can tell that it's me, then I probably could have done a better job, I guess. I don't know. That's how I look at it. But, yeah, it's a weird thing because it is definitely one of the biggest opportunities I've ever had as a musician. At the same time, it's got to have this mysterious thing wrapped around it.
Right.
So,
right.
But no, it's a huge honor. I mean, they've been trying to make this movie for
oh my God, I know
10 years.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the fact that I was hired on to be a part of it is just a huge, huge honor.
And great timing, too, because like you say, they have been talking about it for about a decade, and things might not have been the way they are now if they had done it back in 2007 or whatever.
Exactly. Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows how they would have pulled it off?
What else do you sing, or what else do you listen to besides Queen? I mean, I presume, as a singer, you have other artists or other songs that you like.
I grew up listening to like George Michael, a little bit of Jeff Buckley, U2. I don't have terribly eclectic tastes. I kind of grew up listening to top 40. And my younger brother was the one who really kind of pushed me into the world of rock in the early 90s when the grunge movement started. And before that, I was kind of like, that's too aggressive for my taste. I like the soft pop. I like the Richard Marx and
Yeah.
the New Kids on the Block. No, that was my speed.
I don't know how they would go symphonic, but hey.
You know what? I shamelessly, proudly attribute the fact that I can sing falsetto to New Kids on the Block.
That's
so
that's awesome.
There you go.
Yes.
That's great.
I'm actually a huge Richard Marx fan myself, and he was just here in Atlanta last week, but last year he did a show here with the Atlanta Pop Symphony, so you might want to give him a call, and maybe you guys can all work something out.
No kidding.
Maybe Black Jacket Symphony
could
do Richard Marx.
I just saw him put out a hilarious tweet recently about, it was kind of a mockery of how rappers battle against each other, and he said something about an epic battle against Kenny Loggins, or
yes, I've seen that. Yep.
Most badass '80s pop singer. I don't know.
He's a really funny guy. He really is. He has a great sense of humor about himself and does things like that.
Definitely.
Actually, Mark, how old are you?
41.
Okay, so that would make sense from the whole George Michael
the time, yeah,
fandom.
Yeah, that was the perfect time. I was kind of really discovering singing when he released Faith, the first record, I guess.
Yeah.
And when he released Listen Without Prejudice, the one with Freedom on it, I was really kind of developing my singing voice. And so he was kind of my first go-to as far as how to use your voice. And
he had just a stunning voice. I mean, he was so underrated, I think, as a singer that people just pegged him as the Wham guy. And
not just a singer, songwriter.
Yeah.
I don't think people realize that he wrote all of his own material. That's incredible.
And he wrote Careless Whisper. He wrote Careless Whisper when he was 17.
Yeah, that is ridiculous, and that's super encouraging for me as a songwriter to feel like you can be a good singer and a good songwriter, which is so hard to come by these days.
I was going to say, if you could be doing whatever is the next phase for you, what would that be? And it sounds like you write songs.
Yeah, well, my old band put out 10 records, and it was all original material. I've also got a solo album and a couple of solo EPs. So next year, I mean, as much as I want 2019 to be a year where I can finally go back to releasing my own music, I think if all goes well, it's going to be a very Queenie year for me.
I have a feeling that's right. You're going to be doing it for a little while now.
Yeah, so I'm going to have some really great time management next year to be able to block off time to do my own stuff.
Yeah, I was very intrigued by the fact that you shared vocals with somebody. There aren't many bands. I can't even think of one, right?
No.
Well, the Eagles maybe, but that have more than one lead singer. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's challenging. I mean, the Beatles did it, but Paul and John had a very similar vocal range. It's not exactly the same,
Yeah.
In my band, my friend Jason, the other vocalist, had a very baritone, deep, raspy thing. People would often compare him to Neil Diamond, but I think his voice was cooler than that.
Wow.
Not to take away from Neil Diamond.
No, but I'm hearing that right now, and that's amazing.
Yeah, and so we would do a lot. We did a lot of harmony because it was very challenging for us to do a song where we both sang the melody because our ranges were so different. Like, I find my power a lot higher than he finds his power. And so we really were able to develop our technical ability to sing harmony with one another, and that was one of our strengths. It was also challenging to figure out who was the front man, and after a couple records, we discovered that I was kind of like the, hey, look at me, flashy front guy, whereas he was the depth. Since we were a Christian band, we did a lot of speaking in between songs, and he had a real gift for communicating our vision and our passion and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm. What is your range of your voice?
I've never really tested it out.
It must be pretty broad.
It is, and I'm actually very interested in deepening my range. I really respect guys who can sing high but also can be expressive in their lower range. That's the biggest challenge for me, is to make something sound interesting when I'm singing sort of at my speaking range. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I spend most of my time writing songs that really feature my upper range, which is where it's most obviously expressive. But I'd really love to improve the lower range as well.
What is your band's name that we can go back and look?
Down Here, one word.
Because now I'm super intrigued by checking out your other stuff.
Yeah.
You have a terrific speaking voice, too. As soon as you started talking, I was drawn to you. So
you could do radio also in your spare time.
No, seriously. I was very drawn in. It's interesting. So you should, your voice is quite a gift.
Oh, thank you. That's very sweet.
Well, I just have one more question for you about the movie. I mean, was it a fulfilling experience for you to be in the studio doing Freddie's songs, knowing what it was going to be used for? before?
Kind of a dream come true. I mean, the way that I learned to sing was by mimicking other singers, and sometimes to my detriment. Even like in the 90s, I got way into Pearl Jam, and you can hear that. Unfortunately, you can hear that in my early recordings with my old band, and it's hard for me to listen to early stuff because I'm like, no, don't do that with your voice. But
Eddie
with
Vedder.
this movie, it was kind of like the ideal mimicking situation for me. You know, the whole goal was to sound as much like someone I already sound a lot like as possible. So it was a super, super fun experience.
And what a cool thing, though. I mean, to sound like anybody in the world, to sound like Freddie Mercury.
I know.
As a songwriter, you know, someone who wants to be an artist and has a lot, I feel like I have a lot to offer as far as that goes. If you're going to be compared to anyone, it may as well be someone that people regard as the best in their field.
Yes, exactly.
It's always a compliment. It's always a compliment.
And then with Freddie having been such a theatrical person, does that come into your performance at all when we're going to see you when you come to Atlanta?
Oh, definitely. I mean, with my old band, I was also the main guitar player. So logistically, that stuck me behind a microphone stand the whole time, obviously, because you can't play guitar and hold the mic at the same time. So I never really developed, quote unquote, frontman performance
moves
with that old band.
Yeah.
To the effect of roaming around the stage and climbing the rafters and whatnot. But with this Queen thing, I was kind of thrown into the deep end as far as you got to be a frontman now. You got to be okay with roaming the stage with nothing in your hands, nothing to hide behind. And I really love it. Of course, there's no better person to learn those skills from than the great Freddie Mercury. So I try to give a tip of the cap every now and then to his movements. Because, I mean, you can't perform Queen just standing behind a microphone and just not moving. It just doesn't work.
That's right.
Yeah.
So you have to be extremely animated, or else people will say, well, you're nothing like Freddie Mercury. Sure, you sound like him.
Right.
But it's such a tightrope to walk, because if you move too much, it's like, oh, he's trying to be Freddie Mercury. And if you move not enough, it's like, oh, Freddie Mercury was such a great performer and you're terrible. So I got to find every night I'm walking that impossible balance between giving that appropriate tip of the hat to maintaining my own artistic identity, because I don't dress up. Obviously, the Black Jacket Symphony does not dress up and pretend they're who they're performing.
So you're not wearing a unitard?
No, there's no way I could pull that up. But that's kind of a line that I draw in any performance. Like anytime you see me on stage, I'm me. I'm never trying to be Freddie. I will never don the mustache or take the microphone stand apart so it's only half of it, even though that would be a lot of fun to have that in my hand and hide behind it a little bit.
That's in the movie.
Yeah, I know that much, actually.
Yeah, I guess Rami had a whole different way of having to approach playing Freddie, because then he really had to become Freddie. You're just singing
Absolutely.
Freddie.
So what do you wear? Are you wearing a black jacket?
With the Black Jacket Symphony, that is required apparel.
I love it.
Okay.
All right.
That's cool.
Yeah, you don't have to guess what you're wearing with them. It's great.
It's like having a school uniform.
Well, if you were going to tell Atlanta anything about the show that you would want to draw them out to see, tell us.
It is a fantastic show, people. Worth your time, worth your money. Tell your friends. It is a night at the opera performed from front to back, so you can do your homework and go listen to that record and get familiar with it, because there are some deep cuts on it, but of course you get Bohemian Rhapsody and a couple other really well-known tunes, and then we get to rock out and have fun with some of the greatest tunes.